Good morning, everyone. So this will be the last of the Rollo Devos in the book of Exodus, because these Devos are soon going to change into something else, another purpose. Instead of being just devotions, they will end up becoming very soon the teaching lessons for youth group, the stuff that we will discuss at youth group on Sunday nights. See, I'm going to try what's called a flipped classroom model, doing the teaching in several Devos throughout the week with some questions and recommendations for you to journal and think about during the week. And then on Sunday, as a group, we'll spend our time discussing the lessons and see how that goes. But for today, we're going to end our study of the book of Exodus. And this is a pretty good place for us to end our study. There's a major transition in the book going on right after this. You see, the book begins with the salvation of God's people, and then it ends with worship, which is where the rest of the book is going to go after this. And that, in a nutshell, is really what the Christian life is. God saves us in order that we may worship him. For example, John Piper likes to say that missions exist because worship does not. And he's right. In fact, that's even where we're going with the end of this book, or the end of this part of our lessons anyways. So remember, we've been talking about the beginning of chapter 19, which is a DTR, a kind of DTR, God defining the relationship between Israel and us and him. And we've looked at the past and the present elements of that definition of the relationship. Today we're going to look at the future one. And this really answers the question of, why did God save us? What was his purpose for choosing us, planning salvation, sending Jesus, working out all of history to Jesus, and then saving us personally? Well, it's basically the same purpose that God had for saving Israel. And God tells us that in Exodus 19, verse 6. You shall be to me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. Now that's an odd phrase, kingdom of priests. It's the only place that it's used in the entire Old Testament. So scholars like to debate what it means, since we don't have anything else to help us nail down a definition. But I think if we look at it in the context of all of the Bible, there are two parts to it. First, there's the personal part of it. Israel, I'm going to move my arm a little bit. Israel was called to serve and worship God, every single one of them, in all that they did. Even though they did have specific priests whose job it was to be in charge of formal worship and offer sacrifices, all of Israel was called to serve and worship God. And all they did, whatever they did, farmers, shepherds, blacksmiths, all of them were serving God where they were. They were all called to worship God where they were. Now, this is something that sets Christianity apart from pretty much every other religion out there. In almost every other religion, there are priests, and they are the ones who serve God. Everybody else just benefits from the priest's service, making them right before the god or gods that they believe in. But their work doesn't actually do anything for the service of God. The best their work does is is the necessary stuff that allows the priests to do their work and keep God happy. Also, the priests or a special choir are the only ones who sing and worship God. Everyone else just watches. But in Christianity, God is served by all his people. Whatever your parents do, for example, that is service done unto God, and it is as glorifying to God as any pastor or anybody else in ministry. Whatever you do, or when you do your homework, or if you have a job or anything like that, all of that is service to God. And it is just as glorifying to God as anything I do, Pastor Chris does, or any other pastor, if you are doing it for the glory of God. If we are doing it for the glory of God, every calling is equally good service to him. Jesus is our high priest, as the book of Hebrews puts it, and he has made each one of us priests under him, called to serve and worship God, whatever it is we do. But there's a second part to this as well. As God promised Abraham, they would be a blessing to all the families of the earth. So part of that blessing was sharing the message of God with the world around them. Their nation was supposed to be a light in the darkness that would attract people to it, to see the holiness, the godliness, what true joy looks like through the lives of the Israelites. Now, they didn't do that well most of the time, but that was the purpose for which God saved them. Yet there was an even more important purpose because from Israel, Jesus would come. And of course, Jesus is the true blessing to all the earth, the entire world, bringing salvation to all the earth. And of course, this didn't end with Israel. It continues on to us, as I've already mentioned in this. In 1 Peter 2:9, Peter says, "But you are a chosen race, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a people for his own possession, that you may proclaim the excellencies of him who called you out of darkness into marvelous light. So there it is. God saved us so that we could worship him, serve him, proclaim him to the whole world. Now, how do we do that? Okay, briefly, part of it is just sharing the gospel with people. That is what the church does throughout the world, and individuals with the church as well. That's our primary calling as a church, to spread the gospel. But part of it is also simply living godly lives before our neighbors. When we live godly lives in this present dark and dangerous and sinful world, we show how amazing our Savior really is, and how incredible he is to all those people out there who know they need something, just don't know what it is yet. So we have been saved for the same reasons that God saved the Israelites, so that we could worship him, serve him, whatever career we have, and proclaim his excellencies throughout the world, through how we live and how we share his message. So y'all think about that. And it's been good doing these devos with you.